Hey art nerds! Today we are going to use POSCA markers on black paper to draw a festive Christmas tree. So the materials you're going to need are black paper or colored cardstock, whatever you would prefer. You can also use black cardstock. And you're going to want opaque markers. Now I hear Crayola also makes some decent opaque markers, but I'm going to use POSCAs, partially because POSCAs are what I'm familiar with. The main colors you're going to want to have handy are brown and green, and then some colors to decorate your tree with. Now if you're not the sort of artist who's comfortable freehanding, you may want to use a pencil, and you're going to faintly draw a line on your page. You're going to draw a triangle, however large you want it to be, a rectangle, and then you're going to sketch in a star. And I apologize if this is difficult to see. It'll become opaque in a moment. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our darkest green. So I have a blue-green here. This is going to be the shadows of our tree. And we're going to fill in the tree using this blue-green. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the top of the tree again, but before I do that, I'm going to start with my darkest, actually, you know what, I'll do the reverse. I will fill in the, oh, gotta be careful with that. I'm going to fill in the rectangle at the bottom of the tree with a light brown, and you guys can see how opaque these markers are. Now, I want to be careful and allow them time to dry before I apply another layer, because you can tear your paper up if you apply too many layers while it's still wet. You would need to use something a little bit more gentle than the bullet nib that I have on these markers. So once this has had a chance to dry, we can go ahead and do our next layer. So I'm going to use the darker brown. And you can kind of see where it's still wet because it wants to pick up. I'll let that dry a little bit more, and I'll use my lighter green and start filling in the tree kind of leaving the shadow. Now what's nice about these markers is as they dry, you can go kind of back and forth with them. So if you decide you need more shadow, or maybe you want a darker shadow, maybe you want to use dark blue instead of blue-green, you can go back in and do that. So I ended up covering a lot of the tree with the mid-green because the blue-green dried a lot lighter than I expected it to. And I wanted to build up contrast. But I have it's like an indigo color right here that I'm going to try using. And I also have like a medium blue that I can use to add shadows. So I'm going to add a little bit of bark texture to the stump. And again, what's really cool about POSCA is you can just keep going back and forth and reworking it until it looks the way you want it to look. Okay, so we've got some areas that are pretty saturated. They're going to take a little while to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and start it on that star. Now I could do it with a gold, or I can do it with yellow and shade it to look gold. But I think I'm going to do it with a gold because I also have a copper marker and I can do my shading with gold, copper, and white. Wait, is that copper? No, that's just brown. But I do have a copper marker somewhere. I just have to find it. Aha! Here we go. So when you're applying color, you want to think about it in a couple of different ways. You want to think about it as sort of which shapes have the largest shape, or which areas are going to have the largest amount of color. So for the star, we're not going to start with our shading color. We're going to start with our main color because the shading is going to take up a lot less space on the star. So I'm going to outline it first, and I drew a star just kind of using the same method we used to draw stars from like first grade on. And I know this is going to take a few layers because the sparkly colors tend not to be opaque. Now, you can kind of mitigate that. I could have put a white underneath and then did the gold on top of that, or I could have done yellow on top of that, and that will make the gold kind of pop. But because it's slightly transparent, we can actually get two tones of gold. We can get a darker gold where you can see the black through the gold ink, and then we're going to get a lighter gold after we reapply. So that is my first layer. on the star. And I'm going to go back into the tree stump with our, no, that's our copper. We want our brown. And I'm just going to break up the darker areas a little bit with these sort of hashed lines. And if you want an even lighter tone, there is a peach in the main set. So I would recommend you let it dry for about 10 minutes. But if you don't have 10 minutes, just as I don't have 10 minutes, you can go ahead and move on. So I've got my next darkest color here. And I'm just kind of lightly working it in here and there to add some shadow between the boughs of our tree. You can work them in a little further. You can put them in under the star. But irregularity is sort of the key here. At this point, I've also decided that the right side of the tree is going to be receiving less light than the left side of the tree. And that's just going to help give this a 3D sort of volumetric feeling. We already kind of established that on the stump. Now, if you find that you've added too much blue, you can again always rework with green. Alright, if you're satisfied with your tree, you can definitely stop here. It definitely looks pretty good. We're going to take this a little bit further. I'm going to use just a little bit of the indigo here and there to create low lights. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the lighter green to create highlights. Now the thing about indigo is it doesn't show up particularly well on black, but it shows up great on some of our lighter colors. So that's kind of why we've been working in the progression we've been working. We want it to show up. And I've got my lighter green. You want to be kind of sparing about this, but you guys can see we've created some volume. Next, I will go ahead and do the low lights. No, I wanted to do the highlights on my star. So I'm gonna give my star another layer of gold, and that's not showing up quite as much as I'd hoped, but that's not really too big a deal. Now I've got my copper. So you guys see, hopefully you see, that we've got 3 layers of delineation. Something else I'm going to do once this is dried, I'm going to go in with brown and kind of just outline that. So again, this is another good stopping point if you're satisfied with your work. You can stop right there, but if you want to keep going, we can add some white highlights to our star. And we can also add some ornaments to our tree. So this is where you can grab all your fun colors, or you can go more traditional. And we're going to start with the garland. So for the garland, I'm going to do it red and magenta. So I'm going to go ahead, and hopefully it's dry. I'm going to start doing these sort of little fuzzy lines, which make it look a lot more like garland, and sort of filling in the center with that too. So while we wait for that to dry, we can go ahead and start adding some ornaments to our tree. Now we've already got green and we've got blue going on, so if you have any sort of glitter POSCA markers, this could be a good time. Or if you've got some of the pastel pastel POSCA markers, or anything sort of pretty and fun and festive, now could be a good time. I'm going to start out with just some really simple little magenta circles. And so much of drawing is just putting together, creating lots of very simple shapes, combining them, and when you view it as a whole, it always seems more complicated. So I'm going to not fill, but sort of disperse magenta ornaments across the tree. While those dry, I'm going to use a white POSCA. I have a large one here to just sketch in some snow on the ground. You might want to do presents, you might want to do a background. It's really up to you. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing kind of larger snow mounds and then smaller ones. And like with the star, they're not really opaque right now, which makes them seem kind of gray. I'm going to use that to my advantage, and I'm going to only apply another layer of white POSCA in the foreground. Now, if you want to get more detailed with your snow, that's pretty easy to do. You just draw more irregularities. Alright, pretty simple, right? Okay, so while that dries, the point is to get to a point where you can always work because you're always waiting on something else to dry. We're going to use this darker red to add some shading to our tinsel. I'm also going to apply another layer of magenta to our ornaments because they're getting kind of lost. And this makes them a little bit more opaque and a little bit brighter. So what color do you think I should use to shade? And I ran my hand in wet paint, so you want to clean that off and kind of re-establish that. What color do you think I should use to shade our ornaments. I'm probably going to use that indigo color or maybe the blue. But I'm sort of leaning towards the indigo because we haven't used it as much in this illustration. And I think next I want to do some lights on the tree. And for that, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. We're going to start with a light yellow. This is a larger one. And we're just going to draw I got my hand in the magenta. Of course I did. We're just going to draw some strings of little yellow lights kind of around our ornaments. And then I'm going to use, I think maybe the indigo just to connect them. Now I drew those way too close together over here. Lost track of what I was doing. Wasn't thinking. So even though this is a really, really easy tutorial, you still got to pay some attention to what you're doing. Don't be like me. Also, while that dries, I'm going to go back in with my white. I'm going to add another layer to my snow. Now, unfortunately, this white's a little dry. Needs a couple pumps just to get the POSCA flow in. And you can tell because it was kind of tearing up the snow I'd already put down. And then I'm going to use our indigo to add a little bit of low light, a little bit of shadow to our, oh, that's blue. Grabbed the wrong one. I mean, the blue would work too. The indigo is just a little bit better for this. Oh, and some of them are still wet. But you see, I'm just adding a little bit of low light to them. I'm also going to use the indigo to draw sort of just sketched in like hashed or dotted lines the wire that connects the ribbons. And I really should have, not ribbons, the lights. I really should have drawn fewer lights. Kind of forgot what I was doing. So it would be more dramatic if you had fewer lights and you had longer little wire loops in between them. Now, as you add your POSCA to the paper, it does start to build up a bit of a film, and that film has a good side and a bad side. It takes longer for your markers to dry, but they're more opaque and you need fewer layers. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this white just to add a little bit of glittery reflection to our tinsel. I'm going to go back and add highlight to like the ornaments as well as they dry, but right now they're a little too wet for me to do that. make your little Christmas tree as busy as you want it to be. You can fill it with ornaments, or you can keep it more simple. You can hide little presents under the tree. You can deck it with candy canes, or you can set it in an outside snowy scene. You can completely skip decorating it at all if you wish. There's a lot of options for this sort of very basic Christmas tree design, and using POSCAs, which are an opaque pen medium, it's very easy, it's very handy, there's very little to clean up, and using black paper, your colors really pop. They really stand out to the viewer. So I'm going to use a little bit of a darker yellow on the lights, and I'm doing that towards the end of the lights just to kind of give that impression of like glass Christmas tree lights. Always have that kind of look where they're brightest in the center, where the electricity is, you know, causing it to glow or light up, and the glass towards the end is a little bit thicker and maybe it doesn't conduct light as well. I'm just going to add a little white dot in the center of some of them, just so it looks kind of like it's glowing. You don't have to do that. It may even just be too much, too busy, hard to tell what's going on. Then I'm going to add, since this is an outside Christmas tree for some reason, I'm going to add a little bit of snow using the chunkier white marker. Alright, I think we've got it. We have here a very easy to draw, very easy to paint Christmas tree. Requires minimal drawing skills, but you might want to reference a real Christmas tree or pull one up on the internet. I think this would be really wonderful to deck Christmas cards, or to put up on the fridge, or I don't know, just something so that your home has a little bit of hand-drawn holiday flair this year. So I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful, useful, and I certainly hope you found it inspiring. I hope you will pick up a pencil, a pen, and try drawing along with me. If you're looking for more POSCA tutorials, I have them here on this channel. If you're looking for more drawing tutorials, I've got you covered as well. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year. Bye guys.